Okay, I wanted to start out by welcoming everybody and thank you for being here. This has been a really exciting journey for a product realization group to be working with FreeWire technologies and also to generate the NPI information that's going to come out of this. So I want to just dive right in and introduce the panelists. Closest to me is Martin Lynch, the COO at FreeWire. In the middle there is Jeff Rosen, principal at JSR Consulting. And on the end is Jay Feldis, who is the principal technical program manager at Product Realization Group. So I'm going to ask a couple things. We will have a Q&A session afterwards, after the panel, about midway. So please remember to hold your questions for that. So here's my panel. All right, guys. All companies survive and thrive on the success of their products. Yep, there you go. Yeah. Why was NPI important for this case with FreeWire? And maybe we could even take a step back and say, what exactly is NPI?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, NPI is the process of taking a product that you think is done and actually getting it done. And that's the big delta. So if you get it, and it's working, and you're having fun with that design, and you're really happy with yourselves, you're about 10% of the way done. The rest is NPI, or product lifecycle process. And NPI will get you that product that, while it won't guarantee that you'll be under budget on your project costs or on schedule, which is really tough, and I get it, it'll get your product so that it's repeatable, it meets the specs that you can count on, it has reliability that your customers can count on, and it'll give the company a good name, because the last thing you want to do in a startup is put out a bad product that you think meets requirements and have to go on the apology tour. So that's the NPI from my perspective.
And I think the other question you asked was, why was it important here? What was important here? And I think the reason and rationale was, and Martin mentioned this, is it's the difference between thinking you're done and actually being done. And so I was first boots on the ground, and there was definitely a thought that this product was ready to ramp. This product was, we just needed to develop a supply chain. So when I came in, the focus was, hey, we're ready to develop a supply chain and start building a lot of these things. And quickly you realized there had not been a thought process of any NPI or NPI development, any NPI work. And if you actually take it all the way back, it was, and Martin uses this term a lot, is it was a variety of science projects that were still undergoing constant change. So why was it important here? Is it's a complicated product. It's got to go through a lot of hard environmental type of impact. And it wasn't even close to being ready. So from a FreeWire perspective, it was nowhere close. And they had two very big name early investors who had expected a higher level of, I'll call it, experience through that process. So it was absolutely critical. They were nowhere near where they needed to be. And there was expectations that they would be out the door and shipping this product regularly quite quickly.
I think one way to look at it also is as a technical program manager, is what is your plan to get to production? And that NPI is the process of putting that plan together. And that starts in the design phases, and that are you designing for manufacturability, are you designing to meet your regulatory requirements, or are you designing it and then you'll figure out the regulatory later and find out you have to redesign it. So I think a big part of it, first coming in, is let's figure out what we're trying to do and how we're going to get there, roadmap it, find out what our risks are, and plan accordingly, and try to keep these things from becoming a problem later on in the process.
Yeah, if I can just adding to why was it important to FreeWire is FreeWire had a really unique opportunity in that we had, like Jeff said, very, very strong investors, what we call strategic investors, as opposed to venture capital. Normally, when you get a startup, you get an angel, you get a venture, and maybe you'll find a strategic. With FreeWire, we were the opposite. We started out with a strategic, and now we're starting to pivot towards venture capital. So in some ways, we were lucky, but the expectations are quite high because strategics aren't interested in your valuation. They're interested in some secondary property of the company, like in particular the product that you might deliver for their requirements or their future market needs. And so when I came to FreeWire, like Jeff said, I called it a science experiment because functionally it was a cool product. We're basically, at this stage of the company, we're a system integrator. And we're going to start moving up the food chain soon. But when you're a system integrator, you can buy some good components, and the software is the glue, obviously. But that product has to go through a huge amount of work to get it to be functional and repeatable at a high level of quality and reliability, and it wasn't there. And so we really just had to. I remember my first day of work, I asked to see the BOM, and they asked me which BOM. And I immediately knew I was in trouble. So I gave them 2 weeks to freeze the BOM and put it under rev control. And that was the beginning of the NPI process, is just getting a BOM and getting everybody to agree to what that BOM was, because everybody was operating in different areas that they believed was the product. Because there were so many changes, there was no consensus on what the product was. So that's really what began NPI for FreeWire, was just freezing the BOM. And then it still took another month after that, because once we froze it, and everybody figured out all the problems with the BOM, and then we kept changing it for a month. So it's fundamental. You can't get a product into production if you haven't dealt with some of these basic areas of reliability, specmanship, supply chain, and ability to assemble it, test it, ship it, just all the fun stuff. As I'll borrow a saying from my old Maxtor days, real engineers ship. So if you haven't shipped it, you're not an engineer yet.
Thanks, Martin. As we started talking, I realized that I've skipped over a little bit of an important part of the intro, and that is who is FreeWire and the NPI process. So just curious, maybe I'll start from the industry level. How many people here are from or familiar with the alternative energy, especially storage and charging industry? Wow, that's quite a few. Okay. How many of you are familiar with FreeWire Technologies as a wireless charging company? Okay, a few of them. And how many here are familiar or have worked in or around the NPI new product introduction process? So most of you. Okay, so this is a pretty wise crowd here. So this makes the story well. But I'd like to actually take a step back for just a second. And Martin, can you give us just a quick top line of who FreeWire is and what you do? And you have mentioned some of the challenges that you had when you came in as COO, but just sort of as background, it struck me that not everyone here is maybe all as familiar as we are.
So FreeWire it's a 5-year-old startup. Actually, it was founded by 3 individuals, all of which are still with the company. Our CEO, Arkady Sosunov, started the company when he was going to Berkeley, I think, getting his MBA, and met. I think one of his advisors was on the board of a VC and got funded early on, so they were quite lucky to get that. And so I came on with the company only about 7 months ago. So the company had been in place about 4 years. And originally the company, it was called FreeWire because they were going to make inductive charging, wireless charging in effect. And they abandoned that and pivoted over to electrical generators, and then again pivoted towards electrical vehicle charging. So typical startup where you think what you started with is your product, and then 2 years later you're on something completely different, which is not unusual at all to find yourself pivoting several times as you develop a product. So they had strong investors with British Petroleum and Stanley Black & Decker that were both strategics, each looking for a different type of product. Stanley wanted a electrical generator, only because they were starting to get in that market and saw some opportunities to differentiate themselves. And then you have British Petroleum obviously looking for electrical vehicle charging because they were unsure where things are going, and they were unsure about infrastructure requirements for for permanent install EV charging, and that's how FreeWire got started. And so when I came on board, like I said, I saw we had an electrical generator and an EV style product called a level 2 charger, which is about 7 kilowatts of charge out of 2 outputs. And that's when the fun began.